Hello to all you innies and outies out there, and welcome to today's new Severance video. We are back with our weekly theory video where I discuss some of the biggest talking points after the most recent episode of Severance, and let me tell you, after episode 7's emotionally devastating story on Gemma, I couldn't agree more with what Irv said back in season 1.
Let's burn this place to the ground.
In today's video, we'll be discussing the purpose of the testing floor and Gemma's importance to the overall plans of Lumon. We'll also be taking a deep dive into the dark secrets of Cold Harbor and if Helly or Helena will ultimately save Gemma. So much to talk about, so let's put on our makeup and wigs and discuss some crazy theories after watching episode 7 of season 2 of Severance. So as I like to do with all these videos, let's start off by talking about Mr. Milch, and after this 7th episode, what are we going to do with Seth? It seems at this point that it's every other episode for me that I feel bad for him, whether it be him discovering the paintings, whether it be the stupid performance review he got, the mirror scene we saw a couple weeks ago. Look, the man knows how to dress well. He knows how to be a great host to a great dance jazz experience, and he's also said to be the nicest Lumon employee towards the innies, but then he goes ahead and does this to Gemma.
How long have I been?
If you wouldn't mind turning around and heading back in, it would be greatly appreciated. On you go.
Where's...
Thank you, Miss Casey.
Look, at this point, I think he's too far gone. That was just so mean to what he did to Gemma, and he did that before in season 1. So, question is the redemption arc still on the horizon, or have you all thrown in your towels on Mr. Milch? Because I think I'm at that point at this point of the season. Now on to the meat and potatoes of this week's discussion, and that's what we learned is going on with what Lumon is doing to Gemma on the testing floor, and what does it mean for the overall story. Now, taking it from the top, here's what we know so far. First off, it appears that Lumon has been there from the very start of Mark and Gemma's relationship. Let's take a look at Mama Sweet Tea's comment, which by the way, I love that name, as they say Lumon was a part of their story at the very start. Note the logo on the blood collection equipment when Gemma and Mark first meet. So following up from that comment, yes, as they said, when Mark and Gemma first met at the school and during the blood donation scene, you noticed the Lumon sign on the equipment, meaning they've had access to both Mark and Gemma's blood, and God knows what they've been doing with it since then. Now, flash forward to when Mark and Gemma are at the facility clinic, and I mentioned in my main breakdown, but you notice that the doctor was briefly seen walking past them. We also have the forms that Gemma signed that also had the Lumon signal on them as well. So it appears that Mark and Gemma didn't just happen to fall into the lap of Lumon, but instead it seems that they were carefully targeted or deliberately selected, and to make things even worse, the shared trauma they've experienced after losing a baby, and I wouldn't put it past them if the miscarriage we saw that Gemma experienced was most likely orchestrated by Lumon as well. Now we're going to get into the why in a second here, but now focusing on what we know so far about what Lumon is actually doing to Gemma on the testing floor for the last 3 years. So in episode 7, we found out that the MDR department is responsible for refining data for Gemma's innies, more on that a little bit later, but for her innies having unpleasant experiences based on woe, malice, and dread. So we now have a better understanding of what the MDR department does, so let's talk about how we now have more of an understanding to more of the responsibilities of the O&D department. So we discovered in episode 7 that Gemma is a fan of plants, not ants by the way, so O&D gets her watering cans. Now in one of the flashbacks, we saw the clinic sent Jenna the Chikhai Bardo cards, and we know those are the same cards we saw in O&D, and we know the chain of events those cards created between Milch and the MDR department with the whole OTC situation. Now, speaking of Milch, you all remember this line from episode 7?
Yeah, it's one of those things when you have to draw a duck or a rabbit or whatever.
You know who has a duck in their office, right? It's Mr. Milch, so I wonder if that's a coincidence. But going back to O&D, besides them curating and placing artwork throughout the severed floor and spreading out the handbooks and the tote bags, it seems that O&D other tasks seem to be creating various items that are connected to Gemma and her likes and dislikes, as well as creating the items that are found in individual testing rooms. Which makes me wonder, what are the hatchets being used for? Now, with that understanding, let's talk about the goal of what's being achieved here and what's Gemma's role in all of this. Now, taking a look at Maddie's comments here, they said that the rooms are things Gemma in particular hates, or at least one. Early in the episode, Gemma joked that she would write Mark a thank you note, and he replied that she hates writing the thank you notes. Just makes Lumon even more sadistic. Now, to Maddie's points about the notes, that took place in Allentown, and remember, Allentown was first mentioned in season 1. Back in season 1, Dylan said that Mark S. was first hired on the 7th floor, and his first assignment was to refine that Allentown file. Now, Mark did an unusually outstanding job on that file by refining it much faster than most new employees would be able to. Now, of course, we know that earned Mark S. the unique perk of the crystal cube engraved with his face and name and the word Allentown, which is displayed on his desk. Now, going back to the ultimate goal here, it appears that Lumon's goal is to teaching the severed chip to sever the host every time they feel one of these undesirable emotions. Now, the question is, could we see Lumon getting the approval from the government to selling these chips to the larger market to live a pain-free life and having the world thanking Cure for saving humanity from its life experiences of pain? Think about them hitting the mass market and selling the Severance package or premium to different various high-end businesses with elevators and floors. I can see them selling a severed parachuting experience, or severed dentists, or severed flights. You can even think about, with the whole Allentown, having your severed spouse be done. Or we already know they have a severed birthing retreat, so what about a severed hospital or a severed assisted living facilities? You name it, sky's the limit. Now, let's be clear about one thing, the severance chip won't be affordable for everyone. Now, outside of Lumon, we've only seen people like the senator and his wife using it, so you would imagine the product would be extremely expensive and exclusive to the ultra wealthy and the ones who can only afford it. Now, bringing it back to everyday regular people that might not be able to afford the chip, they would still have to live with their trauma and experience the hardships of everyday life, and that is actually something that could be potentially further explored in future seasons. Or hell, Apple, I just gave you all a spin-off show idea. So if Lumon ends up on top at the end of this show, I would not be mad at seeing a spinoff with that idea in mind. Now, bringing it back to what Lumon's doing to Gemma, for all my different theories and all the different theories that's made their rounds online, from child cloning to them killing the goats to so many other conspiracies and theories, what they're actually doing to Gemma is somehow even darker. Lumon is testing how much suffering a human can endure before their body and or mind completely betrays them at their lowest point. Which leads me into the Gemma of it all and how incredibly sad it was to witness her enduring these experiments over and over and over again. Now, something brand new that we saw in the episode was the fact that Gemma had more than one innie, which opens up a whole new can of worms of multiple personalities being in one person's chip potentially, which gives even more credence to the ongoing theory that Irvin has had different personalities and innies throughout his time at Lumon. Now, sticking with Gemma for a bit, let's discuss the possibility that Gemma willingly agreed to be tested on versus being taken against her will. Now, first, we've already established how Lumon has had their eye on her at the start of her and Mark's relationship, and we know that they were the medical team involved with her IVF journey. So after seeing several attempts that unfortunately led to Mark and Gemma not being able to have a baby, could it be possible that Lumon promised her a child for her and Mark as long as she agreed to undergo the experiments? But of course, she wasn't fully aware of the full implications of what that meant. Kind of like selling your soul to the devil in order to have a child, thinking in the lines of something like Rosemary's Baby. Taking a look at Moonlight's comments here, as they said, it made me think that Lumon is so sick that maybe by signing up for the IVF through Lumon, Gemma signed up or signed a waiver to allow them to experiment on her unknowingly in the small print. But flipping the coin over for a second and talking about this, we have been under the impression that Gemma was in a car accident and was determined to be dead, but we still have not seen exactly what happened that night besides her saying goodbye to Mark and heading out to play a game of charades. So the question is, was Gemma taken, but was it with her consent? Obviously, that's still a big mystery, but in my mind, I feel as though she probably agreed to be tested on for the purpose of helping her family getting pregnant and having a child with Mark, but obviously her not knowing exactly what she signed up for. Look, we know that people will do unimaginable things and agree to do things when their will and their heart and their soul has been broken so many times, and we saw that in episode 7. Now it's time to get a little bit darker. Let's talk about Cold Harbor.
If you were caught in a mudslide, would you be more afraid of suffocating or drowning?
Drowning.
Could Cold Harbor be reference to death by drowning, a deep fear of Gemma's? I believe that Cold Harbor could be the ultimate test, and that being death itself. This goes back to our conversation about episode 6 of Severance of this season, and it having ties with the discussion about innies having their own soul. Could we see one of her innies being drowned to death in the once completed Cold Harbor room? It seems the purpose of Cold Harbor is to severance a person in moments before death. Going back to Lumon's pitch to the wealthy, imagine your Audis never experience death or really any other discomfort ever again, which would leave one's innie or innies to only knowing a world of exclusively going through horrors of pain and suffering and ultimately death. Which actually had me thinking about this over the weekend. Is the Wall of Smiles all previous experiments like Gemma, but they were failed experiments and they were disposed of? Now let's end this portion of the video on an even darker note. Now I've discussed this in the past, but I'm not entirely sure if the stories are being told in chronological order. I feel like we've been seeing Mark's Audie's world and his innie world at different points when he began the reintegration process. We really don't have a perfect sense of when exactly Gemma's scenes on the testing floors occurred. What if Mark's innie already completed the Cold Harbor file, but those final moments of his innie and his Audie's journey at the end of episode 7 is after Gemma completed Cold Harbor and she's already gone?
Drowning.
Has it been foreshadowed this whole time? Now, final things I want to mention before wrapping up this video is how Helly/Helena could factor into Gemma's story. Now, we already know that Helly was on a mission to find Irv's map, and there's even a shot in one of the trailers showing she found it, as you all can see on the screen now. So again, we don't know the timing of everything, but let's just say Mark doesn't immediately return to work and he's still somewhat recovering at the end of episode 7, and let's say it's Monday morning and he hasn't come into work, leaving Helly to starting her mission on finding the testing room floor and finding Miss Casey. Let's say Helly finds the elevator, she goes in the elevator, and as we saw with Gemma switching into Miss Casey, Helly will go down there and she will switch to Helena, but now that leaves this question. She told Mark in episode 6 that she's the boss, so we are to assume that Helena knows about what's going on with Gemma, which makes this line even more diabolical.
We get to the goat department and they're like, yes, Miss Casey's here. She's in this goat cage.
So, Helena won't save Gemma. Instead, she'll now know that Helly found the testing room floor and will assure that she won't tell anyone, including Mark, about any of this. Or, on the flip side, she wasn't aware of the full extent of what was going on with Gemma on the testing room floor, so she'll be so disturbed or wants to help her in order to impress Mark, because we know that she does have a thing for Mark, and she will try to stop and ultimately save Gemma. So again, will Helena or Helly be the hero and actually save or hurt Gemma? Now, last thing I want to mention before wrapping up is what we know so far about episode 8. Now, episode 8 is titled Sweet Vitriol, which means cruel and bitter criticism, and we also know that it's 37 minutes long, making it the shortest episode of the series so far. So if I were to take a guess, I bet that we finally get to see what Cobel's been up to. I would imagine she goes back to that town that we saw in episode 2 called Salt's Neck, and maybe we'll get a better understanding of what exactly happened to Charlotte Cobel, and I bet we even see that call that Devin made to her from episode 7 make its way into episode 8, and that being the reason Cobel returns to Cure to get back into the main story. Now, I can't end this video without giving more praise to my 2 MVPs of episode 7, starting off with Dichen Lachman, who just gave a Emmy-winning performance. So incredible, emotionally moving, phenomenal performance by her. And I also want to share with you all that the Severance cinematographer Jessica Lee Gin made her directorial debut in episode 7. And if you all do not know, it is now one of the highest rated TV episodes ever on IMDb. And to continue directing, as she said, the thing I learned the most is that this is what I want to do. So me personally, that is extremely exciting because I thought she did a phenomenal job. It's one of my favorite directorial debuts in recent memory. So I hope that she gets to do more movies, more shows, but more importantly, I hope that she definitely directs more episodes of Severance. I think that's a pretty fun place to end this week's theory video. So with that said, share your thoughts about everything we discussed in this video, and please keep sharing your incredible creative theories in the comments for more videos just like this. Now, if you all haven't already, check out my breakdown of episode 7, where I talked more about the MDR twins. Did we see Mark and Helena's baby Hannah? And what's the secret behind Gemma's last name? And so much more. Now, I'll see you all later in the week to discuss episode 8, which I can't wait to see what it's all about. Now, if this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. Consider sticking around and watching my other Severance videos. And after you do so, consider subscribing to the channel. Now, if you all like this video, consider hitting that like button, sharing this video. And if you all want to take the support even further, consider joining the channel memberships. With that said, remember, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next video. And remember...
Hey, I belayed my first kuwa in middle school, so...
What?